Alright, got this thing all primed up and painted. So that looks so much nicer. All the repairs done, and let me show you outside what I've been working on. Starting to tear down to get to the carburetor. So on these models here, you've got to take the electric starter off, which I did. That starter sits right here in this area right here, and it makes it necessary to get to these bolts for taking off the carburetor. So I now have the carburetor free. There are 3 linkages and a fuel line which had to be disconnected. I'm going to replace that fuel line because it was a little rotten around the place where it comes into the carburetor. So got this carb, I'm going to bring it into the shop and I can start tearing it down and getting it cleaned. And I've got the rebuild kit for this, so that'll be in probably the video after the water pump build. So I made this pretty cool little jig for holding the lower unit. So it's basically a piece of plywood and I've got it screwed down. I'm moving it out right now and modifying it a little bit so it's easier to rebuild that water pump area, because it's a little easier than trying to put it into a vise, which I have over there. So getting ready to just extend this cut here with the jigsaw, and so it'll sit in there a little bit more, and then I'll show you how I set this up in here. It makes it really easy to work on this lower unit. Just that extra length is going to allow it to slide in there and be much more secure. Tape is really just to kind of help keep from scratching too much when I slide it in there. And originally this was kind of made to take this in this way, but I wanted to have this part of the water pump assembly turned around facing the outside, just like so, and that extra notch has allowed the heavy part of this to sit over good support. So that's that. Now to go to work. Alright, let's take a look at the parts that came in this water pump rebuild kit. This is the new housing, and it's got a new stainless steel cup inside of this too. That's removable, but it's set in there. It's got a couple notches to keep it from spinning. I've got a couple new gaskets. So basically the order in which this gets built is you take the gasket that has the thicker part, set it down in here first. You're going to end up then putting the wear plate on next. Then the next gasket, the impeller. Of course, this is all built down over the top of the water pump or over the drive shaft, and then this is going to slide down over. We're going to turn that drive shaft clockwise, in order to get this to spin the right way. I've also got some hardware here. I've got new bolts for bolting it down, a new keyway to go in the key to engage the drive shaft and the impeller together. So a little bit of grease for greasing up the cup and everything, and I'll probably use a bit of that grease on the spline as well. This will go on that upper spline into the crankshaft and also down inside here too. So it looks like I've got everything to be able to begin that build. So exciting. Alright, got the drive shaft sitting in here, and before I engage it all the way down in there, I'm going to go ahead and get these things built up. Get my first gasket in place, get it seated, and then I had to make a little notch here in this gasket for the little tab that sits up on this wear plate. Get all my holes lined up, and I've added a little bit of grease around the base of the wear plate, and I've also just kind of greased up the all the surfaces of the impeller. A little bit of grease to the key helps it to stick in there. Alright, now I can go ahead and drop this. I'm turning it just to make sure that I've got movement with the prop shaft. Drop the impeller down on, lining it up with the key. Okay, I've got good engagement there. Now we're going to bring down the pump housing. Oh, first I want to grease up the inside of that cup. So I'm taking a little bit of that grease that came with this. It's just a good idea from everything I've read to have everything kind of lubed up. Not excessively, but just enough to so it's not dry. Just like that. Try and line those holes up. Now this is the part where you've got to spin your shaft clockwise as you're forcing pressure down on that housing. And get everything seated. There we go. It just went down all the rest of the way, which is a great sign. Now I'm going to take bolt, which has some Loctite on it, put a washer on it, and get these started. Thought this was going to be intimidating, but you know, after you watch dozens of videos online, you realize a lot of them are very similar. One of the big things though is making sure that those two gaskets, you get them in the right order. You know, get the correct one on the bottom, the correct one on the top, because that does make a difference in how that water is going to flow. Alright, let me find a socket for these. Feels good to be at this part. Been waiting for this a long time. Just snug them up decently here. Alright. Water pump's done.